The Seafarer's Valor was a cargo ship bound for Boston, carrying precious goods from Europe. Captain Benjamin Harker, a seasoned sailor with decades of experience, led his crew of 15 through the cold, churning waters of the North Atlantic. It was a calm night, the kind that made Harker uneasy. Calm seas rarely lasted, and he knew better than to trust them. "Storms brewing, mark my words," he muttered to his first mate, Carter Briggs, but there was no sign of clouds. The stars glimmered above, and the sea was a dark mirror. As midnight approached, a heavy mist began to roll in, swallowing the horizon. "Fog's thicker than usual," Carter said, peering into the void. "It's not just the fog," Harker replied, his voice low. The air felt charged, heavy with something he couldn't name. Then came the lights. First, they were distant, faint glimmers just visible through the haze. The crew gathered at the rails, murmuring among themselves. The lights grew brighter, sharper until they took shape. Lanterns swayed on the masts of towering ships, their sails tattered but impossibly full. The vessels were ancient, their blackened hulls crusted with barnacles and rust. "It's a fleet," whispered one of the deckhands, his voice trembling. "No," Harker said, his face pale. "It's not a fleet. It's the fleet." The Phantom Fleet, a legendary armada said to haunt the Atlantic, was whispered about in every port but believed by none. Sailors claimed it appeared only to those who had wronged the sea, those who owed a debt they could never repay. The ghostly ships moved closer, gliding silently over the waves. Their crews came into view. Skeletal figures cloaked in tattered uniforms, their hollow eyes glowing faintly. At the helm of the lead ship stood a figure unlike the rest. Dressed in the finery of a 17th-century naval officer, his face was pale and gaunt, his eyes burning with an unnatural light. He raised a bony hand and pointed directly at Harker. "Benjamin Harker," the figure's voice boomed, echoing across the water. The crew recoiled in terror. Harker stepped forward, his knees trembling. "Who are you?" "I am Captain Elias Blackthorne, commander of the Phantom Fleet. You have sailed these waters, reaping fortune and wealth, but your debt to the sea remains unpaid. Tonight, you shall answer for your greed." Harker's heart pounded. He had no idea what debt Blackthorne spoke of, but the accusation chilled him to the core. "We've done nothing wrong," Carter shouted, stepping between Harker and the spectral captain. Blackthorne's skeletal face twisted into a grin. "You've plundered the ocean's bounty, spilled its blood, and ignored its warnings. Now the sea demands its due." The Phantom Fleet began to close in, circling the Seafarer's Valor. The air grew colder, frost forming on the ship's rails. The ghostly crew moved with eerie precision, preparing cannons that glowed with an otherworldly light. "Captain, what do we do?" one of the sailors cried. Harker gritted his teeth. "We fight. To your stations." The crew scrambled to ready the ship's weapons, but their cannons were no match for the spectral fleet. The first volley from Blackthorne's ship didn't shatter wood. It passed through the Seafarer's Valor like mist, sending waves of icy despair crashing over the men. One by one, the crew dropped to their knees, overcome by visions of drowning and darkness. "We can't win this," Carter shouted. "We need to abandon ship." "There's no escape," Blackthorne said, his voice like the groan of bending timbers. "The sea claims all." Desperate, Harker grabbed the ship's lantern and lit it with trembling hands. He climbed to the crow's nest, raising the beacon high. "If you want me, take me. But let my crew go." Blackthorne's fiery eyes locked onto Harker. For a moment the ghostly fleet paused, the mist swirling in silence. Then Blackthorne nodded. "You have courage, Captain Harker. But courage alone does not erase a debt." The lead ship surged forward, its prow slicing through the fog like a blade. It rammed into the Seafarer's Valor, but instead of splintering, the two ships merged. The crew screamed as spectral sailors swarmed aboard, their icy touch dragging the living into the depths. At Harker's final sight was Blackthorne standing at the helm, his bony hand raised in a mocking salute. "By dawn." The Seafarer's Valor was found adrift, its deck empty. The ship's log was open to its last entry, written in a shaky hand. "They came for us, the fleet of the damned. I stood against them, but the sea does not forgive. Pray it never finds you." To this day, sailors speak of the Phantom Fleet, warning each other to respect the sea and its gifts. And when the mist rolls in, some swear they hear cannons booming in the distance and the ghostly cry of Captain Blackthorne. The debt is eternal,